Hey guys, what's up? How's it going? Welcome to the channel. Today we are taking a look at the golf swing of Scottie Scheffler. Now, if you want to become a better ball striker and also create a more consistent ball striking in your golf swing, then you're definitely going to want to check out this video and check out Scottie's swing. There's a lot we can learn from Scottie Scheffler's golf swing in this video. So let's dive straight in. We've got some great looks with iron, driver, front on, down the line to look at, all in slow motion, all from this year. So let's dive in and get started. Now, first of all, let's dive straight in with the driver swing from Scottie Scheffler, and then we'll have a look at the iron swing. There are some really unique things about Scottie's swing I'm going to be explaining to you, so let's get straight into it. First of all, setup. Scottie looks like a pretty tall guy. I'm not exactly sure how tall he is, but he looks to be probably well over 6 foot. I'd guess maybe even 6'3", 6'4". Very, very upright posture, not super over the ball. And this is something you're going to see that goes throughout the bag with Scottie Scheffler's golf swing. It's not just the driver. Some players a little bit more over the ball with their chest, with the irons, with shorter clubs. Scottie's pretty upright with most clubs. So but as you can see, pretty good setup, good posture, good alignment. So let's start to take the club back now. As we slowly play this back, you're going to see really good takeaway here. Takes the club away with his body, arms stay pretty triangular. If we pause the club parallel to the ground here, we can see it's quite a flat turn. That's because Scottie Scheffler is quite upright. The more upright you are, the more flat your shoulder plane is going to be. If you're a little bit more over the ball, you're going to create a slightly steeper angle with your shoulders, with your hips, have a bit more pivot in your golf swing rather than turn. I did a video on my channel all about pivot versus turn in the golf swing. Might do a part 2 to that video, as there's a few things, other things I feel that should be covered, but make sure you do like this video and stay subscribed to the channel as well. So as we can see, the club head outside the hand, not much wrist set at this position. This is something, kind of trend we're going to see in Scottie's swing. But he's already starting to load into that right hip. We can see that right hip is clearly moved back. Clearly a bit more angle in his shoulders, knees, bit more turn there. As we start to play this to the top, takes the club back on a beautiful plane, gets the arms working very deep, very quickly in behind him. If we take it right to the top, we'll pause it at the top. At the top, there's a few really unique things, really interesting things to talk about here, things to maybe copy and maybe some things not to copy. It's important to note Scottie is clearly a tall guy with very long levers. We can see how long his arms are here. We can see how high he gets his hands above the shoulder plane. We can also see that club is quite open. It looks like Scottie either has kind of a neutral to weak neutral grip, maybe verging on the weak side. It looks like maybe the club is slightly more open than the left wrist. We can see how deep he gets the arms. We can see very clearly there's no space between that left arm and his body. That left arm comes straight across his body and up with those hands high above the shoulder plane. Now, should you copy this? Shouldn't you copy this? Well, it depends on your build. It depends on your mobility. If you are a tall, athletic build with long arms, long levers, then maybe this is something you should look at. If you're not, if you're maybe a bit shorter, maybe you have just a limited range of mobility, and it could be your right shoulder, your left shoulder, your back, limited rotation, your thoracic, your upper back. Maybe that's something that wouldn't be a good combination for you. It could even lead to some more pain and injury in your golf swing. But we can also see at this position how much weight is loaded into that right leg, that right hip having moved back. We can see clearly a lot of pressure going through that right side. Also to note, if we look at Scottie's right arm, that is quite a modern position for a golf swing. Creating a lot of width with that right arm, getting that right elbow quite far away from his body. We can see there's a big gap between his right elbow and his body. This isn't going to be the case for some players. Some players like to keep that right elbow very tucked in, very connected to their body. And then, you know, it is quite a modern golf swing. He stayed in his posture. The fundamentals of this golf swing are great. And if we start to play this down, this is where I really want you guys to start paying attention. Really through the ball is where Scottie does a few really, really good things. We can also see at the top of his golf swing here, there is some wrist set, but not that much, not a huge amount of wrist set. And as we start to play this down really slowly, we can see the club and hands are going to drop. This has to happen. The club shaft's going to shallow out. Keeps the arms very, very deep, very connected to the body. Rotates very hard, actually. If we pause this with the club parallel to the ground here, we can clearly see his hips are open to the target, shoulders are kind of square to the target, and the arms are very, very connected with a pretty neutral club face, maybe even slightly open. And we can see that his weight has clearly now shifted across to his left side. You can see that by obviously most of Scotty's right foot is actually off the floor. But if you look at his right elbow, his right arm, very, very connected to his body. Now, if we think about what we just said at the top of the backswing, that right elbow was very far away, think about the movement that's happened there, that on the way down, in order to shallow the club shaft out, he's gotten some external shoulder rotation of that right shoulder to then get that right elbow very connected, keep the club coming through on a nice plane, so he can just rotate really, really nicely through the ball. And if we play this into impact, slowly, we can see there's not really too much release, not really too much movement of the hands, really just turning the body. And if we pause it at impact, pretty good impact position. If we look at the footwork, start from the ground up, we can clearly see that he's kind of, all that weight and stuff is going towards the target, going onto his left side. You know, that right foot is hardly touching the ground. Even he's rolling onto the outside of that left foot and ankle. Maybe not something I'd recommend there. Could put a lot of pressure going through that left kind of ankle, left knee, etc. Maintained his posture fairly well. Scottie Scheffler has a little bit of early extension in his golf swing. This is probably something I would guess that's due to his physiology, but also Scotty uses the ground in a very specific way. There are 3 ways to use the ground and create torque from the ground. You can slide, which is kind of a horizontal movement to the ground. You can rotate, which would be more like a Dustin Johnson, or you can really launch off the ground. This is more of a vertical movement where you can really push up off the ground. Scottie Scheffler more falls into this last category. That's actually when they got him on force plates and all of his data, that is how he uses the ground. He really pushes up off it and launches up off of the ground. So here's where Scottie Scheffler's golf swing becomes really interesting, something we can learn from, and also something that is why he's been so consistent. Now pay attention to the club face as he starts to swing through, because he doesn't have much release or flip over of the hands. He keeps the club face very square. If we start to play this through really, really slowly, we're going to see he actually just turns through the ball and even keeps the club head a little bit outside of the hands and keeps the face very square and keeps his chest rolling, keeps his chest rotating to keep that club in front of him, doesn't release the arms, doesn't roll the arms over. Almost a little bit reminds me of almost like a Jordan Spieth, or even maybe like a Zach Johnson type feel, where if you aren't familiar, Jordan Spieth has a little bit chicken wing in that left arm, which helps keep the club face a bit square for longer after impact. Zach Johnson has a very strong grip, but he counteracts that by just not really releasing the club, just turns through it with the chest, keeping the club head in front of the chest. Now let's play this back, and we'll just play it back uninterrupted a few times, so you can see all those things in action here for Scottie Scheffler. So as he takes it away, big wide takeaway, very wide golf swing, arms move deep pretty early, well before they get to the top, big wide high top of the backswing, then rotates and shallows that club out really nicely, gets that connection back with the arms, and then through impact, really no real big release. He's almost really holding on to that club face. Scottie Scheffler does like to hit a fade. You can pretty clearly see that by the way he swings the club with that limited release. He's really holding that face open. No real surprise that he likes to hit a fade. As this plays back, just comment below. Let me know what you think about Scottie Scheffler's golf swing. Let me know the things you like, don't like. I would love to hear from you guys. Make sure to like this video and, of course, subscribe to the channel. Let's move it on to an iron swing, guys. Really good luck we have here with the iron swing. This is, again, there's some really interesting things. We're going to see a lot of similarities, but a few differences as well. So, at setup here, again, very similar to what I was talking about, very upright, not super over the ball. We can actually see how close he's standing to it. Very, very tiny gap between his body and the actual grip of the club. You'd see maybe a slightly bigger gap in some players. So as we take this club away, turns with the body, beautiful takeaway. If we pause it parallel to the ground. At this position, you can clearly see It's a good takeaway. The club face is slightly marginally open compared to his spine angle. It's not open. Basically, players will vary whether the toe of the club at this position points like straight up to the sky, or the club face is more in line with their spine angle, so a bit more square. Here, Scotty is more towards the open side. If your club face is, if the actual face of the club is pointing up towards the sky at this position, that would be really, really open, and something I would probably recommend having a look at in your golf swing. It could be causing some bad shots, or vice versa. If the club face is looking like straight down towards the ground, that would be extremely close. As we play this to the top, again, we'll see that right arm start to move in behind, move quite deep, starts to fold, and then the arms move up. And if we pause this at the top, again, we can see it looks like his left-hand grip is quite weak. This is actually a really good look at this position. We can see it's why. How can we see it's weak from this? Well, basically, if we look at the left wrist and the club face itself, the left wrist is not quite the same angle as the club face. I would say they're very close. I would say the club face is just marginally weaker. It's very open. You can see how that toe of the club is more pointed down towards the ground than maybe at like a 45-degree angle, or Dustin Johnson would be like the other end of the spectrum where that club face is pointed up towards the sky. That would be very closed. We can clearly see those hands well above the shoulder plane. We can see again that right arm, that right elbow, very far away from his body, creating that width, very modern, loaded into that right side. If we look at the lower body, big hip turn, good pivot in his golf swing here, really nice, maintained his posture and spine angle. Now as we start to play this down, watch, he's going to rotate really hard, the arms stay deep. Watch that right arm movement, that really comes down and reconnects to the body. Now if we pause it parallel to the ground again, we're going to see a pretty similar club face angle here to what we saw in the takeaway. That is typically how you would see it with players if they get it a little bit more open, which Scotty is here. It's more on the open side than the square side. Just marginally, it's not super open. It's actually more slightly old-fashioned to have it this sort of angle, more like early Tiger Woods era, whereas like a modern-day player might have that face a little bit more square. Someone like a Dustin Johnson, for example, or Victor Hovland, they would have that face more in line, the same angle with their spine angle. But we can see the arms very connected to his body. That club face is coming through super neutral on a neutral path at this position, with that being in line with the hands. And then we can also see from this position quite clearly how much weight is still driving through the ball through that left side. And then if we play this down into impact, again, no real release of the hands, kind of just turns onto the ball. And again, if we have it paused to impacts, we can clearly see the hips open to the target. Scotty has some very unique footwork in his golf swing. I should have probably mentioned this with the driver, to be honest. Some very unique footwork we're going to take a look at in a second, but we can clearly see all that weight going through, rolling onto the outside of that left foot and inside of the right toe. And so in a second, what I want you to pay attention to again as we play this through is that Scotty is again not going to let the club face release over. He's going to kind of hold on to that club face, keeping it kind of square, keeping it open to the target so he can hit a nice fade. And then also we're going to notice the right foot is actually going to slide back a bit. This is really interesting, and even the left foot. So if we play this through, watch this, the right foot is going to slide, and even the left foot slide back a little bit as he holds on. Look at him holding this club face open as he swings through. Look how open that club face is staying. No flip, no release of the hands really at all. And this is, if we just play this back and forth for you guys a few times, you guys can watch this again and again and just notice that, because that's really something that's helping Scottie Scheffler stay consistent in his ball striking and also control the club face really well. If you think about it, the longer the club face stays square to the target, the more you're going to bring that dispersion in, have a smaller, tighter dispersion, better control of that club face. So it's not surprising that we're seeing this, Scotty doing so well recently, basically, with his golf swing. So if we move it on now, the next swing we're going to take a look at is Scottie Scheffler hitting driver. Now this is from front on, so this is a really different look to the last two that we've just taken a look at, but a really important look in understanding Scotty or basically anyone else's golf swing. And there's some really key factors here which I want to draw your attention to, and again, which we haven't even talked about in the first two videos. So at setup, There's pretty neutral setup, really. There's not much to talk about. It's a great quality setup. Ball kind of just on the inside of that left foot, maybe kind of in line with it. You know, pretty neutral, good spine angle, hands slightly behind the ball because you're going to be hitting up on that driver. And if we start to take this back, there's a little bit of pressure shift, early pressure shift into that right side. But I want you take your attention to how wide and big this takeaway is. If we pause this at parallel to the ground, with the club parallel to the ground, we can see the club is actually not even in the picture of this frame anymore because the takeaway is so wide. We can clearly see that triangle between Scotty's shoulders and his arms. So he's taking this club away with his body, something we should all be doing. Pretty much 99% of pros do this. They take the club away with the body and the hips, the torso, not with the hands and arms like a lot of, you know, us amateur golfers do. So if we, and this is also something that's going to help Scotty load into that right side. If we take it now to the top, see, again, keeps that width, really keeps the width. Minimal wrist set, very, very little wrist set. If we pause this at the top, we can see that actually he really doesn't have much wrist set. Those wrists, that left wrist, not even set to 90 degrees. What helps Scotty, that club is almost parallel to the ground. So it's a big, you know, backswing. It's a big swing. It's not like it's a short Tony Finau kind of swing. But he's able to get that club so far up, so far back, by one, a huge big hip turn, big shoulder turn, but also by having his arms so deep. We can clearly see those arms are very deep. And if we even look at the left arm, we can see actually a bit of bend in that left elbow. Now, actually, this isn't something which I would maybe recommend for a lot of golfers, but it's also not something that we don't see, you know, that 100% of pros don't do. For example, Collin Morikawa, actually, obviously another amazing golfer, actually, if we looked at his swing from this angle, we would see a similarity in that left arm being slightly bent. If you want to check that out after this video, go onto my channel, check out the videos I've done on Collin Morikawa's golf swing. You'll see the same thing from this angle, a little bit of bend in that left elbow. And then as we start to play this down, we're going to see, watch this, before we start to play this down, watch this. Watch his hips and his weight. I want you to really pay attention to this because this is really important. This is one way he uses the ground. Big slide, big pressure shift into that left side, and then he pushes up and explodes. If we pause it just parallel to the ground, you can kind of see he's in the middle of exploding off the ground. You can see he's shifted the weight across to his left side through the ball, and now he's pushing up off that left side, really launching up and off of it. This is a great way to use the ground. It's very, very effective. Sliding over to the left, then pushing up. Now you need to make sure if you're going to do this that you're going to get the push off the ground, because if you slide over to the left and you don't get that push off the ground, you're going to be taking some really chunky divots. Your attack angle is probably going to be very steep. You might hit very low shots, or you might even spin the ball a lot. You're not going to be getting like optimal launch. You got to get that push off the ground before impact. And as we play this slowly into the ball, watch this, watch that left leg. It pushes up and off the ground, which helps him, if we pause it at impact, get into a really, really good impact position where he's cleared the hips and shoulders, both very open. We can clearly see how connected the arms are still to the body. And you can see if you look at the feet, it's very interesting footwork. I wouldn't recommend the footwork side of things, but it obviously works for him. It's not what, you know, a golf coach is going to teach 99% of people, but it works for Scotty. Obviously, he's been doing it a long time and he's a great player, and it doesn't seem to affect him because he does the same thing over and over again, very repetitive. And then if we keep playing this through, again, we're going to see what we've talked about, where there's very little release and he keeps that club in front of him. No big flip or release of the hand. And watch, that club stays in front of his chest with those arms being extended out all the way through, right to the end of the finish position. That is, like, to be honest, guys, like, well, let's just play this through a few times and talk about that, because that's not easy to do. Like, it's really not. To be able to have that control and also the ability to keep turning and rotating your chest at that same speed after impact, you know, it's great in that it helps him really stabilize that club face, stabilize that ball flight, and create very tight dispersions. But it's not something everyone could do. So maybe give it a try, see if you can do it or not. It's going to be very dependent on your thoracic rotation, your thoracic mobility, if your body can physically do that, keep up with the speed of the club after impact, keep it in front of you. Now, as we move on, we'll just have a look at maybe one or two more swings. Let's have a look at a wedge swing. I'm just going to play this through a few times. You know, we've pretty much talked about a lot of the main things with Scotty's golf swing. We'll just play this back. And again, he's pretty upright in the setup. Minimal wrist set, very minimal wrist set. That right elbow is a little bit tighter into the body in this swing, at the top of the backswing. And again, very, very minimal wrist set, rotation of the club face throughout. Almost a little bit like Bryson DeChambeau-esque. Kind of Bryson does that as well, where he tries to really like keep the body in time with the arms, keep great connection with the arms to the body, especially like more back a few years ago with Bryson DeChambeau when he wasn't so big, when he wasn't trying to hit the ball so far. He probably did that even a little bit more. And again, with the footwork, we can see he kind of rolls onto that inside of that right foot really nicely through impact and just stabilizes that club face. No rotation over that club face. Now, why isn't he like hitting very chunky divots if he's sliding onto that left side? And also if he's holding onto that club face, a lot of people would take, if you tried this, you might hit the ball really fat, really heavy, or just take huge, steep, chunky divots. And it is because he is pushing off the ground. He's extending back up, which allows the club to come through really shallow through the ball and come back up, and therefore he's not like digging into the ground. He takes a beautiful, crisp, clean, shallow divot. I'll play one more driver video for you guys just whilst we sum this up. Scottie Scheffler's golf swing, very, very unique. Some of the key takeaways, I would say there's a few things to copy and a few things maybe not to copy, unless they tend to be kind of quirks of your own golf swing that work for you. But a few things to copy: great width in the golf swing, great turn, great loading into the right side, huge, high, wide backswing. You know, some people will be able to copy that, some people won't. Just depends on your body's biomechanics, your mobility. You know, just if you have that stature, if you have that ability, it's a great thing to copy. If not, don't worry about it. There's other ways to swing the golf club that I'll be covering in future videos with other pros of different shaped bodies. And, you know, make sure you do subscribe to the channel and give this video a like, and comment down below whose golf swing you'd like to see me cover in the next video. I'd love to hear from you guys. I reply to all of your comments. And, you know, the other thing, maybe the footwork, very unusual, maybe wouldn't copy that so much, but, you know, how he holds on to that club face, doesn't let the club face release over. I think that's something we can probably always all copy to a degree, as much as we are capable of doing, not letting that face release over. That probably will help with a lot of consistency. That, and also the way he uses the ground, really getting onto that left side early and then exploding upwards, pushing up off the ground. I would definitely recommend giving that a try. That could really, really help your ball striking. A lot of players, you know, myself included, have gotten into bad habits of hanging back on that right side, maybe trying to scoop the ball up into the air, trying to flip the hands, throw the hands and arms at the ball. You know, this isn't what the modern day professionals do. 99% of them really have a lateral move onto that left side. Some stay there the whole swing, some go to the right and then go back to the left. Just depends, but I'll be explaining more about that in future videos on my channel. Really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Do remember to give it a like, subscribe, and of course I will see you guys in the next one.